Introduction. There is a sound beneath all sounds, a whisper behind every thought, a pulse that moves even in stillness. It's not something you hear with the ears. It's something you feel with your whole being. This is the field, the silent field, and it is where all creation begins. We were never meant to create from pressure, not from fear, not from scarcity. Creation, in its purest form, is an act of remembrance. You don't become abundant. You remember that you already are. You don't chase clarity. You clear the noise long enough for clarity to find you. You don't manifest things. You embody the frequency of what already exists within you. This audiobook is not about what to do. It's about how to be. It's not a method. It's not a step-by-step formula. It's a reorientation of your energy toward the center of who you've always been. A return to the original rhythm. A remembering of your role not as a controller of life, but as a co-creator with it. If you've ever felt like something deeper is calling you, if you've sensed there's more to life than what your eyes can see, if you've longed to manifest with grace, to live with purpose, and to return a peace, this is your doorway. Welcome back to the field. Let's begin where all things begin, in vibration. Chapter 1. The vibration of everything. Everything is vibration. Every thought you think, every word you speak, every breath you take is movement, is frequency, is information. There is no such thing as nothing. Even in silence, there is a hum, a resonance, a presence. You are vibrating even when you are still. Your body is not solid. It is a symphony of molecules in motion. Your emotions are not just feelings, they are energy in motion. We live in a vibrational universe, governed not by luck or logic, but by resonance. Like attracts like, not in theory, in physics, in the invisible architecture that underpins all form. When you think a thought, you don't just create a chemical reaction. You emit a signal. When you feel an emotion, you don't just suffer or rejoice. You alter the field around you. Everything responds to this field, not because it is listening to your words, but because it is reading your frequency. The universe is not responding to what you say you want. It is responding to what you are. Your life is not shaped by your wishes. It is shaped by your vibration. This is not a punishment or reward system. It is not personal. It is precise. The same way a radio must be tuned to a station to receive a signal. You must become a vibrational match to the life you want to live, not through force, but through coherence. To raise your vibration is not to fake joy. It is not to bypass sadness. It is to be deeply honest about what is present within you and to bring your presence to it. Presence is alchemy. When you are fully with your pain, without resisting it, that pain begins to transform. When you are fully with your joy, without clinging to it, that joy becomes a frequency of gratitude, not possession. Your vibration is not static. It changes as you change. It evolves as you evolve. But the core truth remains. What you are, you create. When you understand this, you begin to listen differently. You stop trying to manipulate outcomes and start tuning your inner instrument. Like a musician before a sacred performance, you become still. You quiet the mind not to escape the world, but to hear the subtle symphony already playing within it. You realize that nothing is truly external. What you perceive as life happening to you is often vibration echoing from you. This is not blame. This is empowerment. When you take responsibility for your vibration, you reclaim the pen that writes your reality. You begin to ask not, why is this happening to me? But what frequency within me might be inviting this? And with that question, you begin to transmute. Your body hears your thoughts. Your cells are listeners. Every word you whisper internally becomes a command to the energy of your being. When you say, "I am not enough," you instruct your field to shrink. When you say, "I am learning," "I am healing," "I am opening," you instruct your field to expand. And everything responds. People, opportunities, situations, they don't come because you chase them. They come because you are vibrating in harmony with their arrival. The spiritual path is not about attracting what you want. It is about becoming who you already are, in your truest state, the one beneath fear, beyond doubt. You're already whole, already magnetic, already home. This is not poetic metaphor. This is vibrational law. When your inner frequency says yes, the universe does not need convincing. It simply aligns. This is why practices like meditation, breath work, prayer, and silence are not luxuries. They are recalibrations. Every time you return to stillness, you tune your signal, you refine your station, you lift the static, not just from your mind, but from your field. And your field is everything. It is the bridge between thought and form, between soul and circumstance, between the unseen and the seen. You're not a victim of the field. You're the field vibrating. The life you are living is not punishment or prize. It is a reflection, a frequency match. And this is not a reason to panic. It is a reason to awaken. Because if everything is vibration, then everything can change, not from struggle, not from effort, but from energetic clarity. Where are you vibrating now? What is your breath saying? What is your posture declaring? What is your inner dialogue magnetizing? Everything matters, because everything moves, and what moves shapes. Chapter 2, Thought, the Invisible Architect. There's a kind of silence within thought that most never hear, because they're too busy trying to think their way to clarity, when in truth, clarity arrives when thought slows down enough to let insight breathe. Thought is not the enemy. It is the architect. Before there is a word, before there is action, before there is intention, there is thought, not just as fleeting ideas, but as structures of energy being built brick by invisible brick. Each thought you think is a design, a vibration cast into the field, a blueprint drawn not in ink, but in frequency, and the field responds. Most people think unconsciously. Their mental space is cluttered with recycled stories, outdated beliefs, fears inherited from others, and identities adopted for survival. This mental noise becomes the scaffolding of their reality, not because it is true, but because it is consistent. The universe doesn't organize around truth. It organizes around vibrational clarity. And clarity doesn't come from certainty. It comes from coherence. When your thoughts, emotions, and intentions are aligned, you become a conductor of energy rather than a collector of confusion. A scattered mind weakens your field. A clear mind sharpens it. Not all thoughts carry the same weight. A thought infused with emotion becomes magnetic. A thought repeated with conviction becomes gravitational. A thought charged with fear becomes a distortion. You're always manifesting. The question is, from what level of awareness? When thought is left unchecked, it becomes a tyrant. It loops in anxiety. It drags the body through stress. It convinces the heart that it cannot be trusted. But when thought is witnessed, when you step back from the story and observe it gently, you become the author again. Thought is powerful not because it is fast, but because it is formative. It shapes how you perceive, and how you perceive defines how you receive. The mind is a lens. You can polish it with silence. You can focus it with meditation. You can realign it with breath. Every time you choose awareness over reaction, you reclaim your creative authority. And what happens when the lens clears? You begin to see not what is missing, but what is already present. You stop projecting lack and start recognizing abundance. You stop rehearsing fear and begin radiating presence. Thought is the first sculptor of destiny. What you dwell upon, you carve into form. But remember this, you're not your thoughts. You are the awareness behind them. You are not the builder. You are the consciousness that chooses the blueprint. This choice is sacred. It is the fulcrum of spiritual maturity, not to silence all thoughts, but to become so deeply aware of their frequency that you no longer believe every one that passes through. A thought that says, "I am not ready," can be felt and released. A thought that says, "I am not worthy," can be honored and rewritten. You're the alchemist. You are the artist. You're the architect. And every thought you hold is a stroke on the canvas of your becoming. Thought is not random. It is learned. It is trained. It is inherited, conditioned, repeated, until it becomes identity. Most people live not as themselves, but as the thoughts they've been taught to think. They wear beliefs like borrowed clothes, too tight in some places, too loose in others, never quite feeling like home. But when you slow down enough to observe thought, you begin to see not every thought is yours. Not every story deserves to be repeated. Not every voice in your mind is telling the truth. And that recognition is where freedom begins. You begin to ask, who am I beneath this thought? What remains when I stop believing the noise? And what remains is peace. Not the kind of peace that comes from getting everything right, but the kind that comes from no longer needing to believe everything that passes through. The silence between thoughts is not empty. It is alive. It is the space where the soul speaks. And when thought returns, as it always does, you are no longer its prisoner. You are its witness. This witnessing is not passive. It is transformative. The more you observe your thoughts, the more you influence them, like particles responding to the gaze in quantum experiments. Your awareness reorganizes your mental field. This is the spiritual function of thought, not to trap you in illusion, but to become a mirror in which you recognize the infinite. Thought is a tool, a sacred one. When wielded with reverence, it becomes a laser of clarity, a bridge to insight, a vessel for truth. But like any tool, it can wound or heal, depending on the hand that holds it. You're that hand, and you are not alone in using it. The mind, when aligned with soul, becomes luminous. It no longer races. It no longer grasps. It serves. It becomes an interpreter of intuition, a translator of spiritual intention into tangible creation. This is when thought becomes sacred, when it flows from silence, when it listens before it speaks, when it no longer argues with what is, but creates from what could be. You're not here to control every thought. You're here to align with the thoughts that feel like truth. Truth is quiet. Truth does not push. Truth resonates, gently but unmistakably. And you know it by how it feels. It feels like relief. It feels like clarity. It feels like coming home. When you think from that place, when thought becomes an echo of your inner knowing, you're no longer seeking reality. You are sculpting it. Every reality begins as a thought, and the thought you hold, when held with love, becomes a living shape in time. That is how the invisible becomes form, not through force, but through frequency. This is the architecture of thought. And you are its master. Chapter 3, Emotion, the Water of Creation. If thought is the architect, then emotion is the water that flows through the foundation. It does not build the structure, but it determines whether the structure will stand or whether it will collapse under the weight of unacknowledged truths. Emotion is often feared. It is called weakness, called irrational, called too much. But emotion is sacred. It is not chaos. It is communication. It is how your soul speaks when your mind has gone silent. You are made of water, and water remembers. Your tears hold stories your voice was never given permission to tell. Your laughter contains freedom passed down through lifetimes. Your anger, when honored, not weaponized, is often the fire that burns illusion to ash. We are not here to suppress emotion. We are here to befriend it, to sit beside it like an elder, to ask, "What do you need to show me?" And then listen, not with judgment, but with reverence. Emotion is energy in motion. It is vibration at its most felt form. When you allow an emotion to be fully felt, without clinging to it or pushing it away, it transforms. This is the sacred cycle. Feel, witness, release, transmute, not because the emotion is wrong, but because you're no longer afraid of it. Fear of emotion is what makes it heavy, but presence is what makes it sacred. There is no need to fix how you feel. There's only a need to be with what you feel. When you are truly with your sadness, it begins to soften. When you are truly with your joy, it begins to overflow. When you are truly with your shame, it begins to melt into compassion. Emotion is not a problem. It is the invitation to come home, to breathe into the places inside you that have been frozen, to thaw the parts of yourself you've forgotten how to love. You're not meant to rise above your emotions. You're meant to descend deeply into them, with the light of your presence as your lantern. This is not indulgence. This is healing, because what you are willing to feel, you're able to free. We live in a culture of spiritual bypassing, where emotion is often dismissed as a lower vibration. But nothing is more powerful than emotion met with awareness. It is the meeting of fire and space, movement and stillness, the personal and the eternal. And when you allow your emotion to move through you like a river, you do not drown. You are carried. You begin to feel what your soul has always known, that there is no such thing as a wrong feeling, only a feeling that has not yet been listened to. And when you listen, the vibration changes. That is the moment creation begins. When you stop fearing emotion, you begin to realize its intelligence. You begin to understand that your feelings are not obstacles. They are guides. Grief shows you where love has lived. Envy reveals where you've forgotten your own worth. Anxiety teaches you where your soul is out of rhythm with your current pace. Every emotion is a messenger, not a sentence to endure, but a doorway to walk through. If only you have the courage to stay present. Presence is the key. When you turn toward your emotion, when you let it unfold without demand or agenda, you begin to witness something sacred. Emotion becomes energy again. It loosens, it flows, it moves. And when it moves, you move with it into deeper clarity, into deeper wholeness, into deeper truth. There is no such thing as being too sensitive. Sensitivity is a spiritual gift, because sensitivity is receptivity. When you are emotionally awake, you become a finely tuned receiver for life itself. You sense what is not said. You feel what is not shown. You hold a mirror to the world, not just of its surface, but of its soul. This is why your healing is never just yours. When you feel what others suppress, when you bring compassion where others bring critique, you begin to ripple change into the collective field. Emotion is not personal. It is ancestral. It is cosmic. It is communal. To feel deeply is not to be broken. It is to be open. Open to life. Open to change. Open to the movement of spirit within form. And it is in this openness that new realities are born. Emotion is what waters the seed of thought. Without it, thought remains dry, theoretical, detached. But with emotion, thought becomes alive. It pulses. It breathes. It reaches out into the field and begins to take shape. This is why emotion is essential to creation. Because emotion carries charge. The energetic signature that communicates your readiness to receive. To manifest is not to beg. It is to feel as though it already is. The field does not respond to what you want. It responds to what you embody. And embodiment happens through feeling. What do you feel like when you are abundant? What do you feel like when you are loved? What do you feel like when you are free? Not just what would you do, but what would you feel? That feeling is the frequency. And that frequency is the prayer. No words needed, just resonance, just truth. When your inner emotion is aligned with your vision, you're no longer trying to make something happen. You are allowing what already exists to come into form. This is the water of creation. It is not loud. It is not dramatic. It is soft. It is steady. It moves beneath the surface, cleansing, softening, shaping. And when you let it move freely through you, you become the river, not resisting the rocks, but flowing around them. You become not the storm, but the rain that nourishes new life. This is what it means to live emotionally awake, to feel as prayer, to sense as sacred, to move as energy, not from chaos, but from connection. You were never meant to shut down to survive. You were meant to open, to become the living channel where heaven and earth meet, through the body, through the heart, through the waters of your soul. Emotion is not weakness. It is wisdom. Honor it, trust it, feel it fully, and let it guide you home. Chapter 4, Word, the Sacred Decree. In the beginning, there was the Word. Not a word uttered casually, not a word spoken in noise, but a word born from pure vibration, from a still, sacred center of being. The universe did not begin with sound. It began with intention carried on sound. And that is what a word truly is. Intention and form. Every time you speak, you're shaping the field. You are not simply describing your world. You are reinforcing it. You're feeding it energy, structure, frequency. Words are living beings. They carry memory. They hold direction. They pulse with energy long after they are spoken. To speak unconsciously is to create unconsciously. To speak with presence is to enter the lineage of sages and prophets. Those who understood that to say something is to send something. What are you sending with your words? What are you broadcasting with your voice? Each word you speak is a decree, not just to others, but to yourself, to your cells, to the field around you. When you say, I am tired, you are not just reporting fatigue. You are instructing your energy to decline. When you say, I am afraid, you invite your nervous system to prepare for collapse. But when you say, I am healing, you awaken the body's memory of wholeness. When you say, I am learning, you step into the posture of growth. When you say, I am, what follows is an invocation, a spiritual commitment, a vibrational signal that reality listens to. This is why the phrase, I am, is so sacred. It is the bridge between essence and embodiment, between the unformed and the formed. You are not merely saying who you are. You are summoning who you are becoming. And this is not about perfection. It's about awareness. Because awareness makes every word a prayer, even the ones spoken in doubt. When you bring consciousness to your speech, you begin to notice how often your words mirror fear, how easily you reinforce limitation, how reflexively you apologize for your light. But you are not here to shrink your voice. You are here to speak truth into the spaces that forgot how to listen, not with volume, but with clarity, not with noise, but with resonance. The word does not need to be loud to be powerful. It needs to be rooted in presence, rooted in being, rooted in love. And when your words are rooted, they bloom, they grow fruit, they nourish others in silence, long after you've stopped speaking. This is the mystery of sacred speech, that it echoes. It lands not just in ears, but in souls. It stirs not just thoughts, but energy. To speak is to cast. Every word is a spell, and you are the spellcaster. This is why language matters, not for perfection of grammar or eloquence, but for purity of frequency. You can speak simply and still shift the atmosphere, because words don't change things by volume or cleverness. They change things by alignment. A single word spoken in truth has the power to collapse lifetimes of illusion. A quiet yes from the soul can open a path no logic could ever foresee. A gentle, I forgive you, can dissolve generations of suffering. You do not need to be loud to be heard. You do not need to be dramatic to be powerful. You only need to be real. When you speak from alignment, your voice carries the weight of the unseen. It's not just your voice that's speaking. It is the field through you. It is spirit moving as language. It is vibration collapsing into meaning. This is why sacred traditions have always honored mantras, chants, prayers, psalms. They understood something modern minds often forget. The word is the vessel of energy. It opens doors. It carries codes. It awakens memory. And you speak spells every day. When you speak about your life, you either bless it or bind it. When you speak about your body, you either heal it or harm it. When you speak about another person, you either empower them or diminish them, and by extension yourself, because all language is boomerang. What you throw returns. What you declare echoes. So ask yourself, do your words bring you closer to your essence? Or do they reinforce the masks you've outgrown? This doesn't mean you must only speak sweetness. There is sacredness in naming pain, too. There is liberation in truth-telling. But let your words be clean. Let them come not from reactivity, but from clarity. Do not speak to control. Speak to reveal. Do not speak to perform. Speak to connect. And when silence is more aligned than sound, let silence speak. Because silence, too, is a word. One that needs no mouth to carry meaning. One that doesn't echo in the air, but in the soul. And perhaps the most powerful sentence you will ever speak will not be spoken aloud at all, but breathed inward, from your heart to your being. I am willing to live as truth. This is not just a phrase. It is a contract, an invitation, a decree. The word is sacred not because it is rare, but because it is creative. And you are not merely a speaker of words. You are a weaver of worlds. Speak as if what you say matters, because it does, not only to those who hear you, but to the very structure of the life you are building. Let your words be slow. Let them be steady. Let them be drenched in your presence. And when you say, I am, remember, you're not just describing who you are. You are declaring what you are becoming. Speak accordingly, live accordingly, and the field will listen. Chapter 5: Intention, the seed of reality. Intention is not a thought, is not a wish, is not even a goal. Intention is a spiritual posture, a vibrational stance, a silent decision made not by the mind, but by the soul. Is the quiet yes you give before the world hears you speak. The energetic blueprint behind every action, word, or emotion. Intention does not push. It does not demand. It does not bargain with the universe. It declares. It aligns. And it lets go. True intention is not rooted in need. It is rooted in knowing. Knowing that what you seek already lives within you. Waiting not to be found, but to be activated. When you set an intention, you are not telling the universe what to do. You are telling the universe who you are ready to be. This is why intention is not forceful. It is fertile. It does not bend reality with effort. It opens space with clarity. A pure intention carries weight, not because it is loud, but because it is precise. Like the seed of a tree, it may be invisible for a while, but it contains everything: the root, the trunk, the fruit, the shadow, and the blossom, all within a single impulse of becoming. But the seed must be planted in the right soil. It cannot grow in confusion. It cannot thrive in contradiction. This is why your life may not respond to what you want, but it will always respond to what you mean. Intention lives beneath words. It speaks before you do. It vibrates from your body, your breath, your gaze. Have you noticed? When someone walks into a room, you often know their intention before they say anything. It's in their presence. It's in their field. You can't fake intention because it's not a performance. It's a frequency. You can say the right words, take the right actions, even follow the right steps. But if your intention is unclear, the result will be too. This is why intention must be purified, not from judgment, but from honesty. Ask yourself, is my intention to impress or to express, to control or to create, to prove or to embody? Whatever you intend, you call into form, not by force, but by becoming the version of you who already carries what you seek. That version is not far. It is not hidden. It is the most natural version of you. Beneath the noise, beneath the story, beneath the effort. To live with intention is to live with direction without demand. To trust the unfolding. To trust the process. Intention without trust becomes tension. It hardens the heart, tightens the mind, and interrupts the flow. But intention born of trust becomes ease. It moves like breath. It doesn't strain, it harmonizes. There's a difference between chasing a result and allowing a result to come forward through you. One is effortful. The other is energetically aligned. This is why so many people set goals, make vision boards, repeat affirmations, but feel no shift. It is not because the practices are wrong. It is because the internal frequency contradicts the surface desire. You cannot intend one thing while believing another and expect creation to respond coherently. The field is not confused. It is consistent. It mirrors your dominant signal. Not what you say once a day, but what you carry quietly all day. That signal lives in your body, your nervous system, your posture, your breath. It speaks through how you feel, not just what you say. So when your intention is to expand, but your body is bracing, you are asking with one part of you, while resisting with another. The work, then, is not to force an outcome. The work is to return all parts of you to harmony, to bring your thoughts, emotions, and beliefs into coherence, to become whole again, vibrationally aligned with a version of you who already knows how to hold what you are calling in. This is what sacred intention requires. Not perfection, but coherence. Not performance, but presence. When your inner being aligns with your outer action, intention becomes a current. It moves through you. It speaks without effort. It clarifies your path, not by controlling it, but by revealing it. From this space, guidance becomes natural. Synchronicities arise. The right people arrive. The timing, though unpredictable, feels precise. And you're no longer chasing signs. You're becoming one. You're no longer asking, when will it happen? You are resting in the deeper knowing that it already has. And your only task now is to match it. To match the reality you seek by vibrating with its essence now, before proof, before evidence. This is the highest form of intention, not wishful thinking, but embodied resonance. And that is the difference between manifesting from a mind and manifesting from the soul. The mind demands, the soul aligns. The mind measures time, the soul speaks in frequency. The mind fears delay, the soul trusts gestation. Intention is not a guarantee of results. It is a sacred agreement with the unseen to move in the direction of your essence, even when you don't know how it ends. To live with that kind of inner alignment is not just a spiritual discipline, it is a liberation. You begin to walk as if you are already whole. You speak as if the world is already listening. You breathe as if life is not something to survive, but something to partner with, because it is. And your intention, when clear, becomes the invitation, not to bend reality to your will, but to open yourself so fully that reality cannot help but meet you in return. You are the seed, you are the soil, you are the sunlight. And when the seed of your intention is planted in presence, nourished by feeling, and rooted in trust, it grows effortlessly, organically, sacredly, just like you. Chapter 6, Silence, the soil of creation. Before the seed sprouts, it must rest in the dark. Before the word is spoken, it forms in silence. Before creation moves outward, it gathers inward, into the invisible. Silence is not the absence of sound. It is the presence of everything that has not yet taken form. It is the womb of vibration, the breath before birth, the stillness that contains all motion. In silence, there is no demand, no force, no measurement, only being. This is why the deepest transformations do not come through effort. They come through presence. And presence begins in silence. Not the kind of silence that happens when the world goes quiet, but the kind of silence that arises when your inner world stops grasping. This silence is not passive. It is potent. It is creative. It is alive. It is where intention takes root, where emotion integrates, where thought loses its edges and becomes vision. Silence is the place where you stop chasing truth and start remembering it. You begin to realize that what you've been searching for is not something to be found, but something to be heard beneath the noise of the mind, the noise of the world, the noise of the shoulds and musts and not enoughs. All of that noise dissolves when you stop feeding it your attention, and what remains is something ancient, something sacred, something unspeakably whole. In that space, you don't need to name your worth. You feel it. You don't need to articulate your purpose. You become it. You don't need to fix your life. You remember that nothing was ever broken. This is why all wisdom traditions speak of silence, not as a punishment, but as a path, a way back to what you forgot, when the world became too loud and the mind too full. When you return to silence, You return to original knowing, not because silence teaches you with words, but because silence speaks through presence. You begin to feel the subtle shifts of energy around you. You begin to hear what the soul has been whispering all along. You begin to sense that there is a rhythm, a divine cadence to all of life, and it's not hurried. It's here, now, in the quiet space you were taught to avoid, but are now learning to love. Silence is not what you run from. It is what you return to, again and again, until you no longer fear your own depth. There's a kind of silence that unnerves those who depend on distraction. But to the soul, that same silence feels like home. It is where the masks fall, where the pretending stops, where the soul, once exiled to the corners of your awareness, steps forward and says, gently, I'm still here. You do not need answers in this space. You need only to be open, because silence is not emptiness. It is receptivity. And receptivity is what allows grace to enter. It's what allows inspiration to rise. It's what allows healing to unfold. Without pushing, without fixing, without knowing how. All that's required is your attention, not focused like a laser, but softened like a gaze watching water. In silence, your vibration reorders itself. Your energy rebalances. The noise that once dictated your behavior begins to lose its grip, because silence is not the opposite of sound. It is the source from which true sound is born. When your words come from silence, they carry clarity, they carry precision, they carry spiritual weight. When your decisions arise from silence, they do not wobble, they do not second guess. They arrive as knowing, not rushed, not forced, but rooted. The deeper you dwell in silence, the more you begin to feel that all of life is already communicating with you, not through volume, but through vibration. The wind has a message, the body has a rhythm, the breath has a memory, the heart has a pulse that echoes the heartbeat of the cosmos. But to hear these messages, you must first become available, and availability requires stillness. You cannot force silence. You can only stop resisting it. This is the art, to sit in the quiet, not demanding insight, but trusting that insight will come. Its own time, in its own way, carrying exactly what you're ready to receive. Because silence has perfect timing. It doesn't fill the space because it's empty. It holds the space because it is sacred. And you, beloved one, you are part of that sacredness, not because of what you do in the world, but because of what you carry within you, a vibrational resonance with the stillness of the stars. When you honor silence, you are honoring your origin. When you rest in it, you remember who you were before the world told you who to be. And from that remembering, creation begins again, quietly, clearly, completely aligned. Chapter 7, Presence, the soul's true time. The soul does not live in the past, and it does not dwell in the future. The soul breathes in the now, not the mental now, measured by clocks or calendars, but the eternal now, the timeless pulse that underlies every moment you've ever lived. Presence is not something you learn. It is something you return to, because it is what you are made of. It is your home frequency. It is the rhythm of the divine, beating quietly beneath your thoughts. To be present is to be whole, not because all your problems are solved, but because you're no longer trying to solve yourself. You're simply here, fully, breathing, listening, receiving. And in that still, sacred availability, life begins to speak to you again. Not through loud instructions, but through subtle guidance. A nudge, a knowing, a softness, a shift so gentle you could miss it. unless you're present. Presence is more than mindfulness. It is not just noticing your thoughts, but noticing who is noticing. It is not just focusing on your breath, but feeling the mystery that breathes you. Most people live outside of presence. Their bodies are here, but their minds are elsewhere, replaying the past, rehearsing the future, trying to fix, predict, avoid, achieve. And in that mental storm, they miss the sacredness of the moment. They miss their own heartbeat. They miss the warmth in someone's eyes. They miss the invitation hidden in the ordinary. They miss life, not because it's not happening, but because they're not in it. To reclaim your presence is to reclaim your life force. Because where your attention goes, your energy flows. And where your energy flows, creation responds. So if your attention is scattered, your field becomes scattered. If your attention is rooted, your field becomes powerful, magnetic, grounded, alive. Presence doesn't mean nothing is happening. It means you're no longer missing what is. It means you're no longer delaying your joy until the conditions are just right. You're no longer postponing your peace until the outer world calms down. You stop living in the when, and you begin living in the now. And now is where miracles unfold. Not because now is easy, but because now is real. Presence is not passive. It's not the absence of ambition, movement, or desire. It's the alignment of your being with the moment you're living. It's the quiet realization. There is nothing to get to, only something to remember, right here, right now. You see, the present moment is not lacking. It is not less than the future you seek. It is the foundation of that future. It is where seeds are planted, where roots take hold, where the unseen begins to take form. When you delay your joy until something changes, you lock yourself out of the very vibration that makes change possible. But when you embody joy now, even in a small, quiet way, you shift your field. You become the signal of a life you want to live. And the field begins to shape itself around your new frequency. This is why presence is the soul's true time. Because the soul doesn't wait. It doesn't worry. It doesn't rush. It simply is. And when you meet the moment with that same stillness, you become like the soul, anchored, listening, available. In presence, healing happens naturally, not because you are doing healing, but because you're no longer resisting what needs to move through you. Presence gives pain a place to soften. It gives truth a place to land. It gives intuition a place to rise. You begin to feel more deeply, not because you're overwhelmed, but because you've stopped numbing yourself. You begin to love more freely, not because others are perfect, but because you're no longer afraid to be seen. This is the secret. Presence dissolves resistance, and what remains is clarity. Clarity about who you are, clarity about where you are, clarity about what truly matters. In that clarity, the next step often becomes obvious. Not loud, not urgent, but inevitable. Presence is the place where purpose is no longer something you seek. It's something you embody. It's not about what you're doing. It's about how fully you're being while doing it. You could be washing dishes. You could be speaking on a stage. You could be sitting in stillness. If you are there, truly there, you are fulfilling your purpose in that moment. Because presence is not about performance. It is about participation. The willingness to show up to what is real. To let life touch you, shape you, reveal you. Moment by moment. No projection, no performance, no pretense. Just you as you are. Just life as it is. And the sacred meeting point between them. This moment, right now, breathe into it, and you will feel it. The hum of being, the calm within the motion, the awareness behind the noise. That is where your soul lives. Not someday, today. And if you can meet life here, you will no longer need to chase the miraculous, because the miraculous will already be within you. Chapter 8, Faith, the bridge to the invisible. Faith is not a concept. It is a current. It is not what you think about when things are going well. It is what holds you steady when everything familiar dissolves. Faith is not the absence of doubt. It is the decision to stay open even in doubt. It is the soul's way of saying, I may not know how, but I know. Faith begins where control ends. It begins where the ego can no longer predict, fix, or strategize its way to safety. That is why faith feels uncomfortable. It is not a mental comfort zone. It is a spiritual threshold. To walk by faith is to walk not by sight, but by frequency. It is to sense the truth, even when your eyes see only chaos. Faith is not a gamble. It is a deep inner alignment with a reality not yet visible, but already real, because faith is vibrational. It speaks the language of the unseen. It carries the codes of becoming. When you choose to trust something deeper than your fear, your field changes, your body softens, your breath deepens, your direction becomes clearer. You begin to move, not with urgency, but with conviction, because faith is not waiting for evidence. It is evidence within. And this is where the true power lies. Faith is not a belief in what will happen. It is a knowing that you are already held, already guided, already enough. You don't use faith to get results. You use faith to remember who you are when results don't show up on time. And the paradox is this. It's often when you no longer need the result that it arrives, because you have become a match for the peace behind the thing you were chasing. Faith is not asking, will it work out? Faith says, it's already working through me now. This is why true faith can't be faked. It's not a mantra you repeat to convince yourself. It's a frequency you step into, sometimes trembling, but always willing. Faith doesn't ignore pain. It sits with it, breathes with it, listens to it. Then it whispers, there's more than this. And I choose to align with what I cannot yet see. Faith is not a tool to get what you want. It is the trust that what you need is already in motion, even if not yet in form. It is the soul's way of walking in the dark, without fear, because it knows the stars were always there. You just couldn't see them under the glare of certainty. To have faith is to rest in motion, to take action without needing to control, to move forward even when the path is fogged, because your inner compass still works. That compass isn't logic. It's not proof. It's not permission from others. It's the subtle vibration of yes that rises in your chest when your soul knows something is aligned, even if your mind cannot explain why. Faith is the art of learning to trust that yes, to give it room, to follow it even when others don't understand, even when fear tells you it's safer to stay small. Because faith is not safety, it's sovereignty. It says, I'm not here to live according to what's proven. I am here to live according to what's true. And truth isn't always seen at first. It's felt, and then it's chosen, again and again and again. Not because it always feels easy, but because it feels right. Faith is not the absence of resistance. It is the courage to hold space for your resistance, without letting it decide your future. It is the breath you take when everything says give up, but something quiet inside says, wait, trust, breathe. And you do. You breathe. You wait, not passively, but receptively. And in that space, life begins to rearrange. Not always quickly, not always visibly, but always in resonance with the signal you're transmitting. You see, the field responds not to how hard you work, but to how clearly you trust. Faith is frequency. It is coherence with the divine. The more you trust, the more your system settles, the more your energy sharpens, the more the world around you begins to reflect back the peace you've chosen within. Even if the timing surprises you, even if the path is not the one you would have picked. Because faith isn't about certainty of outcome. It's about the willingness to stay open to something greater than what you had planned. Faith is a surrender so deep that you stop measuring life by how it looks and start receiving it for how it feels in your spirit. You walk slower. You breathe deeper. You forgive more often. You realize you don't need to grip so tightly because you are already being carried. That doesn't mean you stop creating. It means you stop creating from fear. You begin creating from clarity, from coherence, from communion with the intelligence that beats your heart and spins this earth and brings sunrise without you asking. That same force lives in you, and faith is how you say yes to it. Chapter 9, Inspired Action, Movement that Flows. There's a kind of action that exhausts. It drains, it pushes, it demands. It is born from fear, the fear of not doing enough, not being enough, not arriving fast enough. This is not sacred action. This is reaction. Inspired action is different. It does not arise from panic. It does not erupt from the noise of should. It emerges from a deeper stillness, from the echo of a quiet yes that moves through the body. With clarity, ease, and direction, you know it when it comes. There is no tension in it. There is no forcing. There is only movement in harmony with the whole. Inspired action is not about doing more. It is about doing what is aligned. And alignment, in its truest form, is not logical. It is vibrational. You may not be able to explain why a step feels right, but when you take it, everything inside you settles. You feel more like yourself. You feel in rhythm with something bigger. This is the action of the soul. It doesn't chase. It co-creates. It listens. It responds. It flows. And in this flow, there is no burnout, because inspired action is not sustained by adrenaline. It is sustained by coherence. It arises from presence. It moves with faith. It carries the signature of truth. This is why less can become more. Why one step in resonance can do more than 100 steps taken in fear. Because inspired action is efficient, not by cutting corners, but by following the shortest path between alignment and expression. It doesn't mean you sit still forever. It means you wait until the inner yes is real. Then you move. And when you do, you are met. You are supported. You find yourself saying things you didn't plan to say, creating things you didn't know you could create, being guided to places you didn't know you needed to go. That is the nature of inspired action. It moves you, even as you move through it. It reminds you that your life is not meant to be built by pressure. It is meant to bloom from guidance. You were not designed to live in constant push. You were not born to hustle your way into wholeness. You were created to respond, to listen for the soul's impulse, and allow that impulse to move your body, your words, your life. But how do you know when an action is truly inspired? You feel peace before the result. You feel clarity in the moment of choice, even if the outcome is still uncertain. You act not to fix something broken, but to express something whole. You move because something inside you says, it's time, not because you're afraid of what will happen if you don't, but because it feels more truthful to move than to wait. This is the energy of soul-led living. It doesn't skip the human experience. It doesn't bypass fear, but also doesn't let fear lead. It walks beside it, but not behind it. Inspired action honors emotion without being ruled by it. It acknowledges doubt, then chooses trust. It pauses when the energy is unclear, then moves when alignment returns. It is patient, not passive, active, but never chaotic, and it is always willing to shift course, because it is not attached to the form, only to the frequency. This is a sacred maturity, when your worth no longer depends on how much you do, when your value is no longer measured by outcomes, when your movement comes from fullness, not lack, from knowing you are already whole, and every action you take is a reflection of that truth, not a replacement for it. This way of living requires trust. It asks that you wait sometimes while others rush. It asks that you listen when the world screams and act when the heart whispers. And it rewards you with peace, not comfort necessarily, but the deep peace that comes from knowing you are in rhythm with your own soul. You will notice that life responds differently when you act from this place. The right connections appear, doors open without knocking, obstacles dissolve without struggle, not because you manipulated reality, but because you matched it. Your vibration aligned with the possibility already present, and action became the bridge. This is inspired movement, not the noise of productivity, but the poetry of purpose. You don't need to chase. You don't need to prove. You need only to listen, align, and let life meet you halfway. Because when you move in truth, life moves to meet you. And in that sacred meeting, manifestation becomes a natural byproduct, not the goal, but the reflection of who you have become. Chapter 10, Abundance, Returning to the Flow. Abundance is not a destination. It is not a number. It is not something you earn by being good, spiritual, or productive. Abundance is a frequency, a current, a way of being in relationship with life itself. It is not found in possessions, but in presence, not achieved through striving, but received through alignment. You do not attract abundance by needing more. You attract it by realizing that you are already enough, because abundance is not something life gives you when you prove your worth. It is something life reflects back to you when you embody your wholeness. Scarcity is not a lack of resources. It is a lack of remembrance. It is a forgetting, a belief that you are separate from the source that sustains everything. But the river does not struggle to flow. The tree does not beg the sun to rise. The breath does not ask for permission to fill your lungs. Abundance is the natural state of the universe, and you are not outside of it. You are part of it. So the question is not, how do I get more? The question is, what am I still believing that tells me I don't already have access? Abundance does not begin in the bank account. It begins in the energetic field of the heart. It begins the moment you stop tying your value to what you produce. It begins the moment you stop waiting for proof to feel worthy. You don't manifest abundance by force. You manifest it by returning to the flow, the stream of trust, gratitude, and receptivity that runs beneath every moment. When you remember this stream, you stop hoarding, you stop clinging, you stop chasing what cannot fulfill you, and you begin to open, to share, to give without fear of depletion, because you're no longer giving from lack, but from the overflow of alignment. True abundance has nothing to do with excess. It has everything to do with enoughness. Enough breath, enough light, enough presence to meet the moment fully. In this way, abundance is not just what you receive. It's how you receive. It's how you allow yourself to be supported. by a universe that is already offering itself in 1,000 quiet ways. The soft rain, the stranger's kindness, the sudden clarity in stillness, the intuition that saved you time, the miracle that came dressed as an inconvenience. These are forms of abundance, not loud, not flashy, but real, deep, sustaining. And when you begin to see these as part of your wealth, you stop measuring abundance by how much you can count and start living it by how much you can feel. Abundance is not about accumulation. It is about circulation. The more freely you let energy move through you, the more space you create for life to pour more into your field. When you give from love, not obligation, when you share without attachment, when you bless another's joy as if it were your own, you enter the current, and that current always brings back more than you gave away, not as reward, but as reflection, because abundance is a mirror. It reflects the vibration you hold, not the image you project. This is why gratitude is such a powerful amplifier, not because it tricks the universe into giving you more, but because it tunes your frequency to the abundance that's already here. You don't wait for abundance to be grateful. You become grateful and realize abundance was never missing. You begin to live in a sacred rhythm. Receive, give, rest, repeat. You stop grasping because you've remembered nothing that is truly yours can be taken, and nothing that is not meant for you can stay. This is the freedom of abundance. It does not bind. It flows. It trusts. It says, I do not lack, because I am aligned, because I am open, because I remember who I am. And who you are is not someone trying to become abundant. You're someone who is learning how to live as abundance. Let that be enough. Let it move through your words, your choices, your energy. Let it soften the places inside you that learn to brace. Let it widen your heart until generosity is your default setting. Not because you should, but because you can. Because you've stopped waiting for permission to receive. Because you've stopped apologizing for your fullness. Because you've remembered that abundance is not a gift for the chosen few. It is the language of the soul, and you speak it fluently. Once you stop translating it into fear, come back to the flow. Trust it, and it will carry you to everything already written for you, beneath the noise of not enough. Chapter 11, Inner Alchemy, Becoming the Vessel. Alchemy was never about gold, not the kind you wear on your wrist or store in vaults. It was always about the gold within, the light buried beneath the layers, beneath the wound, beneath the name. Inner alchemy is the art of transmutation, of taking what was once dense, reactive, resistant, and transforming it into presence, clarity, and light. It is not escape. It is embodiment. It does not bypass pain. It meets pain with such fullness. That pain has no choice but to unravel. To become the vessel is to stop resisting your own becoming, to stop trying to fix yourself like a broken machine, and start recognizing yourself as a sacred container for healing, for light, for divine intelligence. The vessel is not perfect. It is pure, not because it never cracks, but because it has stopped leaking its power through denial, shame, and avoidance. This is where true transformation begins, not in pretending, but in presence. You become a vessel when you become willing to hold all that you are, not with control, but with compassion, the anger, the tenderness, the longing, the fear, the ancient grief passed down through generations. You hold it all in the arms of awareness until the frequency changes. This is the alchemy of the awakened heart, to meet the shadow without collapsing into it, to feel the wound without becoming it, to see the old pattern and choose again. Alchemy is not magic. It is responsibility. It is saying, I will no longer wait for something outside me to change what lives within me. It is sitting with discomfort, not because you enjoy it, but because you trust what it leads to. You trust that beneath every layer of fear is a deeper truth waiting to be reclaimed. You trust that no part of you is unworthy of light. You trust that every contraction is a doorway to more space, if you stay long enough to let it open. Inner alchemy is not dramatic. It does not always arrive with thunder or revelation. Often, it arrives as a softening, a quiet loosening of the grip. It sounds like, I don't need to carry this anymore. I can love myself here too. I am allowed to rest. And perhaps most of all, I forgive. Forgiveness is one of the most potent tools of alchemy, not because it changes the past, but because it releases the binding between who you were and who you are becoming. Forgiveness doesn't mean condoning. It means no longer letting pain dictate your frequency. It means choosing peace over protection, liberation over lingering. Forgiveness is for you. It's how you cleanse the vessel. It's how you make space for your own light to move more freely through you. When you forgive, you are not saying what happened was right. You are saying, I'm done letting it live in me. This is what it means to reclaim your energy. Inner alchemy is not always about fire. Sometimes it's about water, the ability to let what was once frozen finally melt. Sometimes it's about earth, grounding back into your body after years of escaping it. Sometimes it's about air, a deep breath after holding everything in. And always, it is about space, creating room for the divine to move through you without obstruction. When the vessel is clear, life flows differently, not because challenges vanish, but because you're no longer reacting from wound. You're responding from wisdom. You become the calm in the storm, the still point in the swirl, the presence that transforms simply by being whole. This is not perfection. It is integration. It is not the denial of your pain. It is the welcoming of your power. You stop waiting to be ready. You stop trying to become spiritual. You start realizing you already are the alchemy. You are the fire and the water. You are the shadow and the light. You are the question and the answer. And when you hold all of it with tenderness instead of tension, you become a vessel of truth, a living flame, a walking prayer, a space where healing is no longer a task. It is a presence. You. Chapter 12. The Self, Source, Channel, and Living Light. There comes a moment on the path when there is nothing left to seek, not because you have found everything, but because you've realized you were never missing. The self you've been searching for is not a concept, not a perfected version of your personality, not a performance. The self is the source, the still center behind every wave, the silence beneath every word, the awareness that has watched it all, without judgment, without end. You're not becoming this self. You are remembering it. You are peeling away the layers, the stories, identities, fears, until only what is real remains. And what is real cannot be named, but it can be felt. It feels like home. It feels like peace that doesn't depend on circumstances. It feels like presence that doesn't shift with roles. It feels like truth, steady, simple, silent. You're not a body with a soul. You are a soul having a bodily experience. And that experience is sacred, not because it's always easy, but because it's always alive. You are not here to escape form. You are here to inhabit it fully, to bring the divine into the way you walk, the way you speak, the way you breathe. You are not separate from a source. You are a channel for it, a living expression, a beam of light shaped like a human life. And when you stop trying to become more spiritual, you realize you already are. The self does not need fixing. It needs revealing. It does not shout. It whispers. It does not demand. It invites. And when you listen, not with your ears, but with your whole being, you remember. You remember that the source you've prayed to, longed for, cried out to in silence, has always been within, not above, not beyond, here. And this self, this sacred intelligence, is not limited to you. It lives in everything, in the tree outside your window, in the breath of the person beside you, in the space between moments. There is no other in this field, only reflections of the same light, seen through different windows. To awaken is to stop mistaking the window for the view, to stop confusing the shape of the vessel with the truth of the water it holds. You're the water. You are the light. You are the source in the stream. You are not the wave. You are the ocean remembering itself. And when you live from this place, you no longer need to create your reality. You simply become the presence. That reality mirrors in return. To live as the self is not to escape the human experience. It is to sanctify it, to make the mundane sacred, to remember that every moment, even the quiet ones, even the messy ones, is a portal to presence. The self doesn't need the world to change. It changes how the world is experienced, not by altering what is seen, but by purifying the one who sees. This purification is not moral. It is vibrational. It is the dissolving of distortion until only clarity remains. And from that clarity, love flows naturally. Not the love that clings, not the love that needs, but the love that recognizes the same light in every pair of eyes, recognizes the same source behind every form, recognizes that even fear, even anger, even grief are expressions of the soul trying to remember itself. When you live from the self, you stop fighting reality and start blessing it. You stop bracing against change and start dancing with it. You stop measuring your worth and start radiating your truth. This is not philosophy. It is embodiment. It is the moment you realize you no longer need to prove anything because you're already what you were born to be. Whole, connected, awake. And from this space, you do not shrink your light to make others comfortable. You shine as remembrance. You move through the world not as a seeker, but as a living mirror, a soft flame reminding others of the fire within themselves. This is your sacred role now, to walk as presence, to speak as love, to create as resonance, to live as one who remembers. And in remembering, you give others permission to do the same. No preaching, no performing, just being. That is enough. That is everything. Because when the self is fully here, anchored, embodied at home, there is nothing left to chase, no finish line to reach, only this breath, this step, this moment, filled with God. This is where the journey ends, and this is where it always begins again. You are the light remembering itself. There is no distance between you and the divine. There never was. Only the mist of forgetting, only the clouds of conditioning, only the winds of time that carried your attention outward until you forgot the way home. But now you have remembered, not because of what was taught, but because of what was unveiled. Truth does not arrive. It emerges, like light through morning fog, like stillness beneath the storm, like warmth in the hollow of the chest, where longing used to live. You are not what the world taught you to become. You are what you've always been, before the fear, before the story, before the effort to be enough. You are already the enoughness, already the presence, already the prayer. You are not on your way to the light. You are the light, learning how to walk in form. You are not meant to ascend away from this world. You are meant to inhabit it with such clarity, such grace, that even your silence becomes an invitation for others to come home to themselves. There is no more seeking to be done, only receiving, only refining, only returning, again and again, to the sanctuary of now. And when you forget, because you will, let be gentle. Let the forgetting be part of the path, too. Let it soften you, because forgetting is not failure. It is a call to listen again, to stop, to breathe, to remember. You never left. The sacred was always here. And now, so are you. Chapter 13, Integration, Living the Embodied Path. There is a subtle illusion in the spiritual journey that awakening is the climax, the final arrival, the end of all suffering. But in truth, awakening is only the beginning. The real work, the sacred work, is integration, not the high of realization, but the steady embodiment of truth in the ordinary, unremarkable spaces of life. It's easy to touch divinity in meditation. It's beautiful to feel one with the universe beneath the stars. But can you remember your wholeness while stuck in traffic, while doing the dishes, while holding space for someone who doesn't yet see? This is integration, bringing the light all the way down, into your body, into your breath, into your relationships, into your choices. Integration is where the teachings leave the page and enter your tone of voice, your timing, your presence in the moment someone else is struggling. It's where love is no longer a concept, but a frequency you carry into every room. To integrate is not to be perfect, it is to be honest, to notice when you've left yourself, to gently return, over and over again, until presence becomes your default, and peace becomes your home. This is where embodiment begins, not by mastering the light, but by allowing the light to move through your humanity, not around it, because the soul didn't come here to float above life. It came to live within it, to remember divinity while touching the world with human hands. Integration is the sacred return to the places within you that still feel separate, not to fix them, but to bring them home. It's easy to love the parts of you that shine, but what about the parts that still ache, still resist, still forget? Integration means turning toward those places with the same presence you offer others, with softness, with space, with love that does not need to correct, but only to witness. Because what you witness in love, you help to liberate. This is where spiritual maturity ripens, not in how often you feel bliss, but in how gently you hold yourself when you don't. Integration is not about bypassing pain. It's about learning how to stay present with discomfort without abandoning yourself. It's about asking, how can I show up in this moment as the wholeness I remembered in silence? It's about letting wisdom meet irritation, letting truth walk into your conversations, letting clarity guide your choices. Even when no one's watching, you start to realize that presence isn't something you visit. It's something you become. And in becoming it, you begin to live a life that is not just spiritual in practice, but in posture. You walk differently, not with superiority, but with sacredness. You speak differently, not with pretense, but with intention. You hold space not to fix others, but because you know what it feels like to be held by something greater. You no longer need to preach truth. You embody it. This is the quiet power of the integrated path. It needs no announcement. Your presence becomes your teaching. Your coherence becomes your medicine. Your daily life becomes your offering. And yes, you will forget. You will contract. You will still have moments of doubt, reactivity, fatigue. But the difference is this. You know how to come back. You remember the way home. And that remembrance, practiced again and again, becomes the new nervous system, the new rhythm, the new way of being. Integration is not a finish line. It's a lived devotion to keep choosing the self in a world that constantly invites you to forget. You don't need to rise above your humanity. You need only to infuse it with presence so fully that every part of you becomes a living space, where God is welcome, where nothing is outside love. Not your anger, not your fear, not your doubt. Only this kind of love transforms the world, because it's not trying to change anything. It simply sees, holds, and shines. And in that shining, everything real begins to reveal itself. This is the integrated life. And this is the invitation now, not to transcend, but to inhabit, not to chase the divine, but to be it here now in form, fully. Chapter 14, Sacred Relationships, Mirrors of the Soul. Every person you meet is a mirror. Some reflect your beauty. Some reflect your fear. Some reflect the parts of you you've long buried, and others the light you haven't yet dared to claim. Relationships are not random. They are vibrational agreements, echoes of your inner world, made visible through form, through voice, through shared space. You don't draw people into your life by accident. You draw them by frequency, by resonance, by the silent energy you carry, even when your words say something else. And what they reflect back to you is not always what you want to see, but it is often exactly what you need to heal. The soul doesn't seek comfort in relationship. It seeks wholeness. It seeks the kind of connection that brings forward what is unhealed, what is unfinished, what is unloved. This is why so many sacred relationships begin with an intensity that can feel like fire, not because they are meant to destroy you, but because they're meant to burn away what you are not. You're not being punished. You're being polished. You're not being rejected. You're being realigned. Because sacred relationship is not about completion. It's about confrontation with truth. And truth is rarely neat. It doesn't flatter. It doesn't soothe the ego. It asks, are you willing to see yourself through the mirror of this other soul and love what you see, even when it's uncomfortable? That is the work, not to control another, not to change them, but to let the reflection they bring become your teacher. To ask, what is this showing me about me? Where am I still waiting for someone to give what I haven't yet given to myself? Can I receive love without fear and offer it without condition? This is not easy work, but it is holy, because relationship is not an accessory on the spiritual path. It is the path. To be in sacred relationship is not to fuse, but to resonate. It is not about merging identities, but about witnessing one another's essence so clearly that you each feel safe enough to unfold. Real love does not possess. It doesn't grasp. It doesn't mold the other into a version of comfort. Real love creates space. It becomes the ground where truth can rise, where shadows can be met with softness, where old defenses melt, because presence has made them unnecessary. This is what makes relationship a spiritual initiation. The people closest to you will stir your deepest wounds, not because they are cruel, but because the soul knows. Healing only happens in contact, the places you learn to close. Intimacy will ask you to open the beliefs you buried about your worth. Love will ask you to question, and the voice within that says, if they really knew me, they'd leave. Relationship will invite you to reveal that self anyway, because only when you are fully seen can you know if the love is real. This is the sacred risk of intimacy, to stand unveiled, to be soft without apology, to allow love in without shape-shifting to earn it. And when it is safe, when two souls meet in honesty, not fantasy, something holy happens. You no longer see each other as objects, but as gateways. You stop needing agreement and start seeking alignment. You understand that your role is not to fix, but to witness, to honor, to reflect. And sometimes the reflection is complete. Not every sacred connection is meant to last forever in form. Some are designed only to awaken something within you, and then to bless you as they go. Letting go can be just as sacred as staying, because love is not measured in duration. It's measured in depth, in honesty, in the echo it leaves in your soul. True connection transcends time. What was real never ends. It transforms. It becomes part of your field, part of your vibration, part of the light you carry forward. And so you love fully, not because it guarantees safety, but because your soul remembers. This is why we came: to mirror, to meet, to mend, to magnify the light we keep forgetting we already are. Relationship is sacred, not because it completes you, but because it reminds you that you are never incomplete. Chapter 15, the sacred unknown, death, cycles, and the grace of letting go. There is a moment in every soul's journey when the path ahead disappears. No signs, no certainty, no map, only silence, only the vast, quiet breath of the unknown. This is the threshold, the place between what has been and what is yet to come, the space where the old identity dissolves. But the new form has not yet revealed itself, and it feels like death, because it is, but not the kind of death the world fears. This death is sacred, is the unraveling of illusion, the shedding of what no longer fits, the invitation to trust what cannot yet be seen. The ego fears this place. It wants to rush, to resolve, to return to the known. But the soul recognizes it as home, because the soul knows. Creation begins here, not in control, but in surrender. Letting go is not failure. It is faith in motion. It is saying, I no longer need to carry this. This version of me is complete. This chapter has served its purpose, and I honor it by releasing it. And yes, letting go can feel like grief. Grief for the old dream. Grief for the person you once were. Grief for the identities that protected you, even as they limited you. But grief, when welcomed with presence, becomes a form of grace. It softens you. It humbles you. It opens space for something truer to arrive. You're not meant to hold everything forever. Some things are meant to be released like breath, fully exhaled, so the lungs of your spirit can receive again. The soul does not fear endings. It understands them as part of the dance. Breath teaches us this. Inhale, exhale, receive, release, life, death, over and over again. Every breath is a microcosm of surrender, and every cycle you endure, every identity that falls away, every dream that dies with grace, is a sacred rehearsal for the soul's one great act, trusting the unknown as holy, because the unknown is not empty. It is fertile. It is not a void of absence. It is a womb of presence, where new form gestates quietly, but only if you can wait, only if you can breathe through the discomfort of not knowing. of not doing, of not rushing to make sense. In a world that worships certainty, this is rebellion. To let mystery hold you, to let silence speak before strategy, to let the soul's timing override the mind's impatience. This is the deeper surrender, not the kind that gives up, but the kind that gives in to something greater than the ego's narrative. It is the surrender that says, I trust the release. I trust what is dying. I trust what I cannot yet name. This surrender doesn't weaken you. It empties you so that something truer can arrive. Not because you forced it, but because you became available. You became quiet enough to receive the next assignment, soft enough to let go of who you were, brave enough to say, I don't know what's next, but I am willing. And in that willingness, life begins to move again, gently, unexpectedly, perfectly, because the universe never stops creating. It only waits for your permission to create through you again. But that new creation requires space. And space only comes when you release the full weight of what no longer serves. This is the rhythm of all sacred cycles. Initiation, expansion, completion, death, stillness, rebirth. You are not failing when something ends. You are evolving. You are being prepared. You're being cleared. And what comes next will not arrive because you forced it. It will arrive because you learn how to die well, with awareness, with dignity, with peace. So rest. Let go. Lay down the roles, the answers, the urgency. Let yourself be rewritten by silence. Because what emerges from that silence will carry more truth, more presence, and more light than anything you could have planned. This is the sacred unknown. It is not a detour. It is the door. Walk through it and become new. If this message stirred something in you, if this journey opened a doorway, if this remembrance felt like home, share this with someone you love and subscribe to the channel. Every day, a new voice, a new light, a new breath to nourish the soul.